Hey, welcome back. So in this lecture, let's start with our step 2, that is initializing and starting the recorder. Okay. So to initialize and to start the recorder, you have to add two APIs. Okay. So this API is actually mentioned under trace user.c. Okay. So if you browse this file, so you will find it. For example, here it is. So you have to call this function from your pre-RTOS application, which allocates, if necessary, and initializes the recorder data structure, okay, based on the constants in trc-config.h. Okay, so what this basically does is it just creates a recorder data structure in the RAM of your microcontroller, which actually records the pre-RTOS application execution events. Okay, and this recorded data structure later we will dump into our file using a memory logger application. Okay, so that's why you have to call this function. Then you have to call this function UI trace start, okay, which will start the recorder. Okay, the recorder will not be started if an error has been indicated using v trace error. That's okay. To start your recorder, you have to call this function. So now add these two functions into our pre-RTOS application. Okay, so here I have documented them. So this is the first function you have to add. Okay, and this is the second function you have to add. Okay, and add these two functions only if the config use trace facility is equal to 1. Okay, so this config item is actually defined in the pre-RTOS config.h. Okay, if that config item is set to 1, then only use this function calls. Okay, so now let's copy this and go to your project. Here, go to your main.c, and before calling any pre-RTOS related APIs, you have to add this code. Okay, great. So we added these two codes at the top, that is before calling any pre-RTOS APIs. Okay, now you have to do one more thing. So let's save this first. Okay, go to your pre-RTOS config.h, and at the very end, okay, at the very end you have to add this header file. Okay, so that is trace kernel port.h. Okay, so just copy this and add here. All right, so only if this config trace facility is equal to 1. So this config item is defined here. This has to be 1. Okay, all right, so now save everything and go to your main.c. Now we are ready to compile our whole project along with the tracerizer recorder library. So let's select your solution, right click and click on rebuild. All right, so we got 6 errors. Okay, so the errors needs to be addressed. So let's take up this error. So it is saying implicit declaration of the function underscore underscore get underscore premask. Okay, so it tried to compile something. Okay, so it looks like the trc kernel port.h. Okay, when it was processing this header file, it thrown this error. So that means the tracerizer recorder library couldn't able to link to the KIMSys related API. So that we can solve by going into the configuration file of your recorder library that we stored under config, isn't it? Okay, so here is the place. So source config, open your trace config.h, and here, okay, if the selected port is equal to ARM Cortex M or ARM Cortex stick or whatever, include this file. Okay, so that is board.h. Okay, so that will help this library to link to the premask registers. Okay, fine. So let's save this and let's save all. Okay, and now again let's rebuild. Alright, so again the build is failed. There are still 5 more errors. So the implicit declaration of the function sysclock get CPU hertz. Okay, so click on this, it will take you here. So right click on this and select go to implementation to see where it is actually defined. Alright, so this is under sysclock.h. So let's include this header file here. Okay, hash include sysclock.h. Okay, so that may solve this problem. Okay, so let's rebuild once again. So still we have 3 errors to solve, and the errors are okay, so this is the error, the implicit declaration of UCQ get Q number. Okay, so let's see where it is defined. Okay, so this is called from Initializer recorder library, isn't it? So this file belongs to the Initializer library, right? So it is trying to call this function. Let's see where it is defined. Alright, so this is calling our preautos q.c. Oh, that's interesting. Go here. So let's see whether it's a static function or not. No, it's not a static function. Great. So now let's go to its implementation again. So here is a file. So here they have prototyped this function. Alright, so they haven't given any header file for this. That means you have to copy this prototype. Okay, then go here and you have to make it extern. Okay, so even though they have added q.h, the q.h doesn't have this prototype. Okay, so because it's a privileged function, right? So that's why they actually prototyped it in the q.c itself, though, so it's actually hidden from the outside world. Okay, but in this case this file actually needs that file, right? So that's why you have to do extern. All right, great. So now there is another error, the similar error. Okay, you have to get the prototype of this function also. Okay, so that is this function. So copy this and go to this file and go to the top, and here do extern this function. These are externed functions from q.c. Okay, great. So now let's save all and let's try to compile once again. So let's build. Great, so now the build is successful. So we completed our second step, that is initializing and starting the recorder library and compiling successfully. So now let's get into our third step, that is running this Initializer library along with the preautos application onto the target hardware and getting the recorder memory dump. Okay, so that means we will dump the recorder data structure which is there on the RAM of your microcontroller into the file. So let's see how to do that in the next video.